Leah Mercer had learned to tell the time by the shape of light even before she learned to trust clocks. Tonight, the winter sky had turned the color of blued steel hours ago. The wind pushed through the sycamores that framed her porch with a low, patient moan, and the little brass chimes she had hung from the eaves sang like a handful of scattered coins. She'd been setting the kettle on the stove for chamomile when the knock came, 3 quick raps that sounded decisive and then, strangely, a little apologetic. Leah paused. Very few people knocked on her door after 10, and those who did usually called first. She wiped her hands on a tea towel and crossed the small kitchen. The house creaked in the places old houses creak, familiar as breath. The porch light threw a weak, sincere halo onto the front stoop. When she opened the door, winter pressed its cold palm to her face. A man stood on the top step, tall even with his shoulders slumped, his coat unbuttoned as if he'd run out of time. He had a face people noticed without trust, fine-boned, tired, beautiful in the way a cliff is beautiful when the sea keeps asking it the same question. Beneath his coat, in his arms, was a bundle too small to be anything but a newborn. He tried to say something. The porch light found his eyes and made them look brighter and more fragile. "Please," he said, and then the word fell out of his mouth without breath behind it. His knees loosened. His body leaned toward the floor. He fell, collapsed the way people fall when they've been standing in a life too heavy for too long. Leah stepped forward without thinking. Her hands looked for the baby first. She slid the tiny bundle into her arms a fraction of a second before the man went down onto his side on the porch with an exhausted, terrible sort of grace. The baby made a sound like a bird waking. Leah held her close, the weight barely more than a loaf of bread, her head a pedal against Leah's wrist. She turned, kicked the door open wider with her knee, and spoke into the winter air in the voice she had used 100 times in other rooms with other emergencies. "You're okay," she said to the baby and the man both. "I've got you." Chapter 1, the first night the baby was warm, thank God. Her hat had slipped, Leah tugged it back over a downy forehead without waking her fully. The tiny mouth puckered, relaxed. Leah's shoulder learned the baby's weight with the relief of a thing it had never forgotten. She crouched and touched 2 fingers to the man's neck. Pulse, strong but thready, skin cool, breaths shallow like he'd been teaching himself to take smaller ones so he wouldn't use up all the air. He was conscious, barely his eyelids fluttered when she said, "Can you hear me?" "I can," he managed, voice rough. The baby responded with a small, indignant squeak, the universal complaint of babies everywhere that the world had the audacity to be new and complicated. "Good," Leah said. "You're going to come inside now." "All right." She tucked the baby against her chest with one arm and hooked her fingers under the man's elbow with the other. He tried to get up, and failed, then tried again with that stubborn pride men carry like a wallet. Leah braced and helped. He was heavy in the way tall people are heavy, not dead weight, but a gravity you respect. They made it into the foyer, and then the living room, the little house absorbing them with the modest competence of an old boat that had learned how to keep everyone afloat. Leah guided him to the couch. He collapsed into it, eyes closed, an apology on his mouth. "Don't," she said gently. "Later." She settled the baby on her chest and then, with one hand, reached for the knit throw on the back of the couch and draped it over the man. He was shivering now that he'd stopped moving. The kind of shake that starts in the shoulders and steals heat more quickly than you'd think. "Stay," she said to him, the command and comfort intertwined. She stepped into the kitchen, one room over, and set the baby on the counter in a little basket lined with a towel, the makeshift cradle she kept for the rare nights neighbors left babies with her while they ran after toddlers or their own sanity. As the kettle began to hum, she washed her hands quickly and efficient, glanced at the baby again, breathing regular, lips pink, and reached for the phone. "Priya," she said when the familiar voice answered on the second ring. "Leah? Everything okay? I need a consult. Newborn, about 6-7 pounds. Temp is, warm to touch, no obvious distress, strong cry. Father's in my living room and looks like he hasn't slept since last Thursday." There was a rustle on the line. She could picture Priya, dark hair in a sleep must not, glasses askew, kindness winning against fatigue for the 1000th time. "You have a baby in your house at 10:30 at night?" "Yes. Of course you do. You want me to come?" "If you can," Leah said, already grateful. "Bring your stethoscope. And your eyebrows. I might need them." "I'm on my way." Leah hung up and stepped back into the living room. The man had not moved. He looked younger on her couch than he had on the porch, as if the act of falling had peeled off a few years of strategy. His hands were big and square and nicked like he had argued with a car seat recently. He wore a watch that didn't care what time it was. "Sir," she said softly. "Can you sit up and drink something?" She offered her most neutral tone, the one that had carried people through impossible nights when she'd worked the NICU, the one that said you were safe even if safety had to be built from the floorboards up. He opened his eyes. The color there was the tired blue of storm seen from windows. He made himself sit, a small victory. "Where am I?" he asked, looking around the room like realities were a set he wasn't sure he'd been invited to. "In my house," Leah said. "I'm Leah. I live on Sycamore, the little greenhouse with the unfortunate porch light." He swallowed and looked toward the kitchen where the baby basket sat on the counter. Panic flickered across his face, quick and bright like lightning. "Where?" "She's here," Leah said. "She's okay." At the word she, something in his chest loosened and then tightened again. "Thank you," he said. He lifted his hands and then let them fall. "I didn't know where else to go." Leah nodded. "People said that when they were lost, and when they were found." "What's your name?" He blinked. "Grant," he said. "Grant Wilder." The name made her brain do a quiet double take before it placed itself back on the chair and behaved. She did not let her expression change. Later, she would connect the headlines and the glossy profiles and the tastefully furious debate shows and the fact that Wilder and co seemed to own the world in such a civilized way you almost forgot to ask if they should. Right now, he was just a man whose hands were shaking. "Okay, Grant," she said. "I'm going to bring you water and then I'm going to check the baby. My friend, Dr. Priya Narang, is on her way. Do you have a bag?" He blinked, the question backwards in a room like hers. "A bag? For the baby? Diapers? Formula?" He looked ashamed. "Ah, yes. In the car. I think. I left the hospital with a list. I tried. The words hit a wall, turned around, and sat down. Leah held his gaze long enough to make his shame blink first. "You brought her. You got to a door and knocked. That is enough for this minute." He nodded, the sentence landing somewhere useful inside him. His eyes closed for a breath, then opened again with a focus that hadn't been there a moment before. "Her name is Iris," he said. The name came out like a secret pin to his lapel. "Iris Amaro Wilder." Leah smiled before she could stop herself. "Hello, Iris Amara," she called softly toward the kitchen. "You are very new and already very loved." At that, Grant covered his mouth with his hand and made the kind of sound men make when they have run out of ways to keep certain rivers from rising. Leah looked away for a second to give him privacy and to keep her own eyes steady. "Drink," she said gently, and handed him a glass. He did. The baby made a questioning sound that was far too polite to be hunger but was adjacent. Leah crossed the room and lifted Iris against her shoulder. The little body yielded and then relaxed, that ancient mammal wisdom of hearts beating against other hearts. Iris nuzzled Leah's collarbone and made a little kissing sound with her mouth, a reflex and a demand. "She's looking for food," Leah said, glancing at Grant. "Formula okay?" He nodded, exhausted gratitude in the gesture. "Yes. Okay. I'm going to warm a bottle." He stood, too quickly, too eager to help. He swayed. Leah saw it happen a breath before he did and moved. One hand to his elbow. One sentence stretched across the room like a rope. "Hey. Sit." He sat. She made a bottle the way 1,000 nurses and mothers and aunts and tired fathers make bottles, measured water, powder, shake, warm in a mug of hot water until not cold, not hot, but right. The kitchen light made Iris's hair look like ink. Leah tested the formula on her inner wrist. She moved deliberately, with the ritualistic slowness of someone who believes the body knows what to do if the mind will get out of its way. When she brought the bottle to the living room, Grant stood again. He took it like a man receiving a medal he did not deserve. "Hold her here," Leah said softly, tucking Iris into the crook of his arm and adjusting his elbow until the angle looked less terrified. "Keep your wrist under her head. Tilt the bottle just enough so the milk covers the nipple. She'll do the rest." He looked more afraid of the bottle than he had looked of falling on her porch. But when Iris latched, his mouth opened in a surprised "oh." He watched, stunned, as his daughter ate. His eyes filled in a way that had nothing to do with weakness. The room shifted around the two of them, as if the house itself leaned in to help. She's doing it," he said, astonished. His voice altered mid-sentence, softened, went ragged. "She's very motivated," Leah said. "And you're doing beautifully." A car door thudded outside. Leah went to the door and opened it before Priya could knock. The pediatrician pushed her glasses up her nose and looked at Leah in the way old friends do when they have no intention of pretending the world is more orderly than it is. "You look like trouble," Priya said. "Come in," Leah said. "I brought company." They moved through the ritual efficiently. Priya washed her hands in Leah's sink with water that smelled faintly of lemon. She warmed her stethoscope in her palm and listened to Iris's chest while Iris complained and then forgave. "Heart, good. Lungs, clear. Reflexes, fine. Temperature, normal. A tiny scratch on her cheek, the kind fingerprints leave when they're learning how to be gentle. 40 hours old." Priya guessed. 48. 42. Grant's voice from the couch, steady now with the kind of steadiness you borrow from the person you love. He watched Priya with the focus of a man reading a bill he couldn't afford not to. "Apgar?" Priya asked out of habit. 8 and 9, he said, and Leah noted the numbers the way she noted sunsets, not because they were miraculous, but because they were honest. Priya smiled at Iris. "You're perfect," she said, and Iris yawned as if agreement had been negotiated. "Now the father," Priya added, "clinical and kind." "I'm not your patient," Grant started, and Priya leveled him with the look that had gotten her through residency and the lives since. "You're the baby's ecosystem," she said. "Open your mouth." He did, bewildered. She checked his pupils, his skin. "When did you last sleep?" she asked. He rubbed his face and tried to count. "Yesterday." Then he shook his head. "Before that?" "And food?" "I had coffee." Leah made a small exasperated noise. "Sit. Eat," she said, and went to the kitchen to assemble something that could be called a sandwich without blushing. Priya finished her exam, then squeezed Grant's shoulder. "You're dehydrated," she said. "You're crashing. And you're in shock. All of which are things we can fix. You did the right thing, coming to Leah's door." Grant looked like he might argue the word right out of sheer habit. Then he nodded. "Thank you." Leah brought him a plate of toast with honey and peanut butter, an apple, a glass of water that she held in front of his face until he drank it. He did as he was told with the meekness of someone who had made a career of not doing as he was told and had finally found a reason to reverse that strategy. "Tell me what happened," Priya said gently when the room had remembered how to be quiet. In the short version. Grant looked at Iris's face, then at his hands, then at Leah and Priya. He inhaled once, the inhale of a diver standing on a board and deciding whether to jump. "My wife," he said. "Amara. There were complications. It was fast. And then it was over." He swallowed hard. The word hung like a small black hole over the coffee table, warping the air. They kept Iris for observation. I sat there, and there was no Habiba to tell me to go home. My mother died last year. Amara's parents are gone. The nurse gave me a list of doulas, postpartum support, people who can help. Leah's name was on it. I thought I'd drive. Just drive. Get to a door. Ask for help. The car knew this street, somehow. And then I was at your porch. And then I wasn't standing." Leah put her hand on the arm of the chair closest to his knee. She did not touch him, but she placed her warmth near enough that he could choose it if he wanted to. "You did the bravest, simplest, hardest thing," she said. "You asked for help." He nodded like the word help was a difficult language that he wanted to learn. Priya stood and looked at the baby again. "She's good," she said. "You'll need to see your pediatrician in the next day or two. Tonight, you need to sleep. Both of you." "Leah, can they stay?" "Yes," Leah said, the yes immediate and uncomplicated. She had a guest room. She had a small room down the hall that had been painted a pale blue 3 years ago and had smelled like powder and then like grief and then like lemon oil and now like hope again. She had a heart that had closed the careful way flowers close at dusk. She was surprised to feel it unspool so easily and say, "Yes, come in. We'll figure it out in the morning," she said. Grant looked at her like she had put a ladder down into a well and told him to climb, and he could not for the life of him imagine why she trusted him to be careful with the rungs. "Thank you," he said. He said it like it contained more than gratitude, apology, intention, a promise to try. "Eat your toast," Leah said, because sometimes hope hides in bossy sentences. "Then you can sleep. I'll take first watch with Iris. You can have the second if you wake. If you don't, we'll forgive you." He took a bite. He closed his eyes. He chewed like a priest receiving communion. Chapter 2, The morning and the name. Leah woke to the light she knew, that clear, forgiving gray that meant the day had begun whether or not you were ready. She had slept in a chair beside the small bassinet she had retrieved from the attic at midnight with an ache in her chest and a steadiness in her hands. Iris had slept in 2-hour stretches, the way babies do when they are teaching adults to be humble. Grant had woken once, wild-eyed, and fed his daughter with hands that shook until they didn't. Now, steam rose from the kettle like a simple blessing. Leah poured coffee into 2 mugs and warmed milk for a 3rd bottle. The house had changed, very slightly. In the night, it had remembered how to make room. She carried 1 mug to the guest room and knocked lightly with her knuckles. "Grant." A noise that was neither word nor music answered, the sound men make when pillows are asking them to stay. Leah opened the door and found Grant half sitting, his hair defying logic, the blanket tangled around his legs like a fight he had lost. "Coffee," she said. He blinked at the mug as if it were a test. "I don't," he started, and stopped, because refusing coffee would insult fate. He took it, and his hands found the heat like it had a map back into his bones. "Thank you," he said. "What time is it?" "7, Leah said. He winced. There's a call you should hold your daughter," Leah said. "Everything else can be rescheduled or forgiven." He looked at the floor, that familiar muscle in his jaw trying to argue. Then Iris squeaked, as if on cue, and the muscle relaxed. Leah smiled despite herself. "Come on." He followed her to the living room, where Iris lay in the bassinet blinking her eyes in that surprised way babies do when they discover the world is still there. When Grant leaned over the bassinet, Iris's mouth made a small O. His day rearranged itself without asking permission. "She knows you," Leah said softly. He made a sound she refused to transcribe, because some sounds belong to one person and one room and one morning. He lifted Iris carefully and sat on the couch like a man learning to share a seat with oxygen. Leah handed him the bottle. "Morning, Iris," he said, voice low and rough and the most tender sound she had heard in months. Leah watched him feed his daughter and realized something she had known in theory and needed to remember in practice: the world is too hard to refuse these little miracles when they knock at your door. "Do you have diapers?" she asked. Grant shook his head. "In the car. I think. There were so many bags." Leah nodded and went to retrieve the tote he'd carried in halfway when he'd collapsed. It held 10 things that mattered and 10 that didn't: formula samples, a baby blanket, 3 pacifiers without a story yet, a set of tiny socks rolled into themselves like possibilities, a copy of a discharge paper folded badly, a brochure with Leah's name on it from the hospital's support services board with a sharp star next to her number. She felt her throat close for a second. The magic of it undid her, that a small paper card pinned on a wall for years without drama could be an answer on a winter night. When she returned, Grant had finished the bottle and Iris had fallen asleep in that funny way babies fall asleep with their mouth slightly open, milk drunk, and ferociously at peace. He looked up, caught Leah watching, and did not flinch. "You were on a list," he said, the sentence a confession and a benediction. "I'm glad the list worked," she said, because it was true. He took a breath. "I know who you are," he said then, softly. Leah blinked. "Do you?" "You're the woman who runs the Wren house," he said. "My head of HR mentioned you when we were reviewing family leave partnerships last quarter. The program where new parents who don't have support can get a week of human kindness." Leah smiled, embarrassed, proud in a way she tried not to be. "It's not much," she said. "A bed. Food. A person who doesn't panic when babies cry." Grant's mouth tilted. "It's everything," he said. "We We tried to fund something like it inside the company. It kept turning into a brochure. Yours is a front door. Leah glanced at the doorway where the winter light made a neat rectangle on the floor. Some doors want money, she said. Some want a hand. And yours? This one likes both, she admitted. But it opens either way. He laughed, a quiet, incredulous sound. I run a company, he said, and the sentence felt like a code he was trying to decide if he still liked. A big one. I don't watch much TV, Leah said. I make soup and go to bed early on purpose. You're kinder to yourself than most people I know, he said, surprised. Leah shrugged. That took practice. He looked at Iris and then at Leah. Can we stay a day? Maybe two? Until I make a plan. He asked it like someone who had never asked anyone for a day, much less two. You can, Leah said, relieved by how easy the yes still was. We'll sort the paperwork after coffee. The price is simple. His forehead creased. Price. You have to nap when the baby naps. He smiled, and it changed his face so thoroughly that Leah had to look away. That's a fair price. We'll make a list, she said. The simple things first. Bottles. Diapers. A hat that fits better. You need more socks. Babies demand lint and miracles. Is that true? He asked, half laughing. It is, she said. I've seen it happen. She left him to his daughter and went to the kitchen to make oatmeal with butter and brown sugar, the kind you could serve to a weary man and call it breakfast without apology. The kettle sighed. The house breathed with them. When she returned with 2 bowls, Iris stirred and then hiccuped. Grant looked panicked for a fraction of a second and then laughed at himself. I thought she was breaking, he admitted. They do that, Leah said. It's the milk having opinions. He lifted Iris to his shoulder and patted gently, the way Leah had shown him. Iris hiccuped again and then stopped, as if reconsidering. Miracle worker, Leah said. Fraud, he said. I have no idea what I'm doing. No one does, she said. Not at first. He ate the oatmeal in grateful, practical bites. He held Iris and looked at Leah over the baby's sleeping head, like he was trying to thank her from far away. She let him. Sometimes, gratitude is shy and needs distance. When the sun found the edge of the rug, Leah said, there's a nursery down the hall. If you'd like to, nap. He looked at her and saw the way her mouth softened on the word nursery. He didn't ask, because he had not been invited into that story yet. We can sleep on the couch, he said, polite and cautious. We don't want to, it's okay, she said. She learned to say those 2 words in a room with beeping machines and mothers who had forgotten how to say anything at all. It's there. It's for this. He nodded, hesitated, then stood. He followed her. The nursery was small and soft. The walls were a pale blue that made the winter light look brave. A rocking chair sat by the window with a folded quilt on its back. A bookshelf held 6 children's books and 2 soft toys. The tiny white crib looked like something out of a catalog and a dream. Grant paused at the threshold. I don't want to hurt you, he said, and Leah, who had considered the edges of this room like a person considers the edges of a cliff, nodded. You're not, she said. Not by being here. She set the bassinet beside the chair and drew the curtains. The room darkened to a kind dusk. Grant sat carefully. Leah handed him a clean swaddle. Around the shoulders, tight, but not too tight around the hips, she said, demonstrating once with the calm confidence that made new parents hand her their lives without thinking. He tried and failed and produced a crooked burrito that made Leah bite her lip to keep from laughing. She fixed it without teasing, then placed Iris in the bassinet and smoothed a hand over her chest. The baby went still, as if Leah's palm had a button only she knew. "Go," Leah whispered. "Sleep." Grant sank into the chair like falling into water. Leah left him there, the quiet doing work no words could do. Chapter 3, The Errand List. By noon, the house smelled like cinnamon and baby. Leah made a list on a yellow sticky note because lists could pry order out of any afternoon. Bottles, more formula, gentle diapers, newborn and size 1 wipes, onesies, easy snaps, hat, tiny, blanket, washable, nail file, emery board, laundry detergent, unscented, coffee, for me, extra toothbrush, for him. She handed it to Grant. He read it like a man studying the operating instructions for his own heart. "I can go," he said, the eye heavy with intent. "I should. I have a car." "I can, you can," Leah said. "But you should take someone. It's easier with 4 hands." He hesitated. Pride wrestled with practicality and conceded, for once. "Come with me," he asked. Leah nodded. "We'll go after she eats." Priya said, "Keep her warm. The air is sharp today." He looked toward the bassinet and then back. "I'm sorry," he said suddenly, as if the apology had been building pressure somewhere under his ribs. I showed up at your house." "That is what houses are for," Leah said. "Doors, too." He shook his head, disbelief still bright. "I didn't know who else to ask. Everyone in my life gets paid to say yes. I don't know how to ask without the check." Leah thought of the cards on the bulletin board at the hospital, curled at the edges with steam and hope. "You did fine," she said. "When Amara," he began, and stopped, the name a pebble with the weight of a mountain. She would have made a plan. "She left me a list. Of songs. Of places to show Iris. Of words not to say. Of the name she liked for a mythical creature, the unicorn, yes, but also mother, if you say it right." Leah waited. She knew what it was to halt beside certain words and wait for them to become passable. He rubbed his face. "She wanted joy," he said simply. "I don't know how to find it without her." "You don't," Leah said. "You learn the way it sounds covered in other noises." He blinked. "Do you always talk like that?" "Only when I haven't had lunch," she said, and handed him a turkey sandwich. He laughed again, grateful, and ate. They bundled Iris in a soft gray blanket with small white stars and tucked her into the car seat. The bass clicked into his car with a satisfying finality that made Leah's shoulders unclench, though she hadn't known they'd been tight. He stood back and let Leah check the straps, then looked at her like she had performed a magic trick. "It's just a buckle," she said. "It's not," he said, which was more accurate. The store was unremarkable and perfect, aisles full of things people need and things they do not. Leah walked the aisles like a translator. "Unscented," she said, tapping the detergent. "The diapers that feel soft on your wrist will feel soft on her. The wipes without pictures on the package are often better than the ones with." They bought the tiny hat and the emery board and the onesies that unsnapped with a kindness that made you forgive whoever invented snaps. At the register, the cashier watched them in the way people watch puzzles they think they've seen before. Leah braced for recognition and found none. Grant, whose face could command a screen, looked like any new father, tired, dazed, reverent, vaguely sticky. When they stepped back into the winter air, Grant blinked against the cold. A woman with a toddler in a cart bumped shoulders with him and said, "Sorry," and then smiled, the way mothers smile at fathers when they are both too tired to pretend they are in different clubs. Leah watched Grant receive it and store it the way starving bodies store calories. On the drive back, Iris slept. The car hummed like a lullaby phoned in from a kinder world. Leah watched the side of Grant's face as he drove, the set of his jaw less defensive now, the lines around his eyes telling a different story than they had last night. He followed her directions without arguing, turned at the corner where the mailbox looked like a small red hat, stopped at the sign where the sycamores turned the wind into a symphony. "Why Wren House?" he asked, gesturing to the little plaque by her front walk when they parked. "Why that name?" Leah smiled. "Wrens are small," she said. "They are brown and ordinary. They don't ask permission to sing." He nodded, as if adding the metaphor to a pocket he might keep forever. Inside, they settled Iris, put the diapers in a basket, the bottles on a shelf. Leah wrote her number on an index card in case he left and forgot the shape of her street. He watched her write like it was a promise she was making him and not the world. "She's going to wake soon," Leah said. "Then she will be angry, and then she will be fed, and then she will insist on a nap because she is a tyrant for at least 5 months. He looked at Iris with admiration. "I wish someone had told me that when I became a CEO. "They probably did," Leah said. "You probably didn't believe them." He conceded the point with a tilt of his mouth. "Probably not." The day folded into evening, then into another kind of night. Leah made soup with lemon and chicken and rice and the kind of herbs that taste like decisions you can live with. Grant took a shower that made his shoulders drop an inch. He came out looking slightly less like bone and more like man. He stood in the doorway and watched Leah stir the soup, Iris dozing nearby in the bassinet, the house warm and ordinary and more extraordinary than any room he had bought on purpose. "You look like a person," Leah said casually, handing him a bowl. "I forgot how," he said. "You'll remember." He ate, and the silence was more companionable than almost any conversation she'd had that year. Chapter 4, The Room with the Crib. At 9, Iris screamed with the indignant specificity of a baby who had decided the world was unfair because her stomach had emptied. Grant panicked, then remembered, then laughed nervously at his own panic and moved fast. Leah watched him settle, feed, burp, swaddle with help, then with less help, then with only the kind of help that lives in the air between two people who have decided to trust each other when there is nothing else to trust. After the small temper had passed, Leah stood in the hallway outside the nursery and watched Grant sit in the rocking chair and hold his daughter. The chair moved with that quiet old house creak that keeps secrets safe. His head bent over Iris's head. The world narrowed and expanded and became exactly the size it needed to be. Leah's chest hurt, but not from the old hurt that had set up camp there. It hurt from the way hope can make you ache. She turned away, giving them privacy and herself mercy. She went to the kitchen and washed 2 bottles with hands that remembered without resenting. She dried them and set them in a neat row like tiny glass soldiers. She wiped the counter. She turned off the kettle. She breathed. When she returned to the nursery, Grant looked up. His eyes were wet and a little surprised at themselves. "Leah," he said, and the way he said her name was careful, grateful, wary, like he was learning how to handle a fragile thing. "May I ask, why you had a nursery? Why you knew exactly what to do?" Leah leaned against the door frame like a person who wasn't sure if she planned to stand or run. She had told the story before. Not often. Not like this. I was a NICU nurse, she said. For 10 years. I held babies that were too small and too angry and too brave. I sang to them even when I don't sing well. I taught their parents how to ride the waves. She rested her hand on the door frame. I wanted it for myself. We did, my husband and I. He died 5 years ago. Accident. And then I had a baby who did not come home. She took a breath. Said it like the fact that it was true had made it safer to carry. I painted this room before. I closed it for a long time after. And then one day I put the shades up. And I left the door ajar. And sometimes, when I forget why I did that, someone knocks. The chair stopped moving. The pause held and didn't break. I'm sorry, Grant said, and the sorrow in his voice held respect and distance, the way good sorrow should. Thank you for letting us in. Of course, she said. She smiled, the real one that had learned how to come back. Now go to sleep. She'll wake in an hour. She's making you her servant. Gladly, he said, and laughed at himself because he meant it. As Leah turned to go, she realized that the house felt different, like a room does after you open the window and don't close it again. The winter air had edged in. It didn't hurt. She closed her bedroom door without closing it all the way. Grant sang to Iris then, as Leah lay in the dark and listened. He sang softly, a song without words, a melody cobbled together out of the radio and a memory of his mother and the sound the elevator made in his building when it reached the lobby and those commercials with the tinkly piano at the end. Iris sighed. The chair creaked. Leah closed her eyes and let the sound of two hearts learning each other put her to sleep.